it was easy. And you know, I was just so delighted that I pulled it off and that people got it. And people, you know, one of the things I love, I was only thinking about this earlier, is that I'll often get an email from somebody saying, you captured farming life and you captured a farmer of that age really, really well. How did you manage to do it? And because I'm a city girl, I was born in Dublin. So Dublin is our capital city over here. Now I do live in rural Ireland. I am married to somebody who was a farmer. So my in-laws are all farmers. So you know, I have picked up, you know, what it is like to live that life. But still in all, I'm just so delighted when people say, you got it so well, and that reminds me of my granddad, or you've written my uncle here, you know. So it's like I managed to achieve that. I'm so proud that I managed to pull that off. A city girl managed to pull off the story of an 84-year-old farmer. So I'm delighted with myself.
Really good writer.
That's what it is,
So,
definitely.
speaking of language and voice, and I see you have a copy of the book there.
Oh yeah, this is the hardback.
Right. Could you just read a really short passage, maybe that?
Yes, I could. How short a passage?
Um, you know,
You've
a couple minutes. Yeah, it would be
Yeah,
great.
I do. I actually do have something that will be about 2 or 3 minutes.
Sure,
How
that's
does that sound? Okay. So I love reading this little passage, and I'll tell you why. Because it was one, my lovely editor in the UK, Emma Herdman from Scepter, who published it. Um, this was one of her favorite passages, and that really drew her to the book. So I love reading it, and it's just a little standalone one. So this is Morris, and he is toasting his son Kevin. So this is a little memory from when
okay.
Kevin was young. When you were small, no more than 4, I came in late one evening. The kitchen was empty, spick and span as it always was, straight after the dinner. And I knew Sadie would have been elbow deep in soapy water, scrubbing the kitchen back to order not an hour before. My place lay set at the table. And as I lifted the saucepan lid off my dinner and stuck it in the aga, I could hear your voices from down the hall. I sat to the Meath Chronicle, perusing the market news, and try as I might not to let it, the laughter got the better of me in the end, and I left the paper down and headed in your direction. The bathroom door was open, and as I passed it, I could see the bath still quarter full, with a couple of surviving suds and a yellow duck floating among them. I held back in the doorway, peering in at the pair of you next door in your bedroom. Kevin, I love you. Your mammy loves you, Sadie said, marking every word with a kiss to your tummy as you lay on the ground being dried. She loves every bone of you, do you know that? Mm-hmm, you replied, happily watching puffs of white rise from the Johnson's baby powder container every time you pressed its middle. And does Kevin love Kevin? Puff upon puff of whiteness filled the air. Does Kevin love Kevin? I repeated in my head. You didn't reply. Instead, you turned the talcum powder upside down, shaking it vigorously onto your tummy and the floor. Because if you love this wee boy, she continued, dispersing the powder all over you, and are always kind to him and always try to understand him, then I think he will be the happiest little man in the whole wide world. She used the corner of the bath towel to rub the white smatterings from the carpet. Will you do that? Will you do that? Will you love Kevin for me, will you, you rascal? She asked, administering another tickle that let loose more squeals of laughter. I never disturbed you, but made my way into our darkened bedroom and sat on the side of the bed, looking out at the silhouette of our trees and the hills against the night sky, brightened by one of the biggest moons I'd ever seen. It was too much, even for me, a man of 43, to try to comprehend what Sadie had said, let alone a child of 4. Loving yourself. The very thought. I reached for the bedside lamp, fumbling to find the switch under the shade. I pulled the curtains closed and stood looking at the brown flowers with their orange centres, one after another, row upon row. My finger rose to follow the pattern of the petals, my blackened nail and layers of hardened skin that had no hope of feeling the fibre circled anyway. Oh, you're home, Sadie said from the door behind me. Thought I'd change out of these, I said, my fingers pulling away from the flowers, pretending at taking off my jumper. A first for everything, I suppose. I left the dinner for you. I saw that. This man's off to bed. Her head nodded in the direction of your room. Are you coming in to say goodnight? I'll be in now. How many times did Sadie talk to you that way, I wonder? And is that why you are the man you are, so sure and happy in your life? Mm-hmm. There we go.
There we go.
I'll show you this. This was the English hardback version.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The bar stool.
The bar stool, yeah. And this is the English paperback as well. That came out. So you've got himself sitting here, and this is Sadie up here. So I love all the different covers from all over the world. There are some beautiful ones, absolutely stunning books. And I can't wait to get my hands on the paperback, the US paperback, because of coronavirus, people couldn't be in the office to send me copies. So and I love it. And I've seen that image and it's so beautiful. And people have crocheted this. They've done quilts out of this.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing. The Shoot Library in Oregon do this wonderful thing called a novel idea, where they get the whole community reading one book a year.
Right.
And they run all of these amazing events around the book, and one of them was quilting. And if you go on to their website, I think it might be there, this quilting video they put up, it brought me to tears. The most talented of women had read the book and had done beautiful quilts interpreting the book and what it meant to them. It's fantastic.
So it wasn't drunk quilting.
No. No, this was so professional. Honestly, I was blown away by it. I should have been in Oregon on May 3rd. I should have been over in the States for a little bit, for about a week, visiting different bookshops.
This is so wild. This is just so wild, this whole thing. Has it affected your writing?
Yes, it has. I'll tell you how it's affected my writing. My workspace has been invaded. My husband has obviously had to come up. My husband's a teacher, so he's home. And my son, he's sitting, he was to sit major exams. At the minute, he's 15 and we've got state exams. He should have been sitting. So literally my workspace, my lovely quiet house was invaded. So about a week ago, I was tweeting about how I'd taken to the back seat of my car, because I just couldn't take it anymore. If I heard one more Zoom meeting coming through the walls at me while I was trying to write my second novel, I was just going to throw myself out the window. So I took to the back seat of my car, and so me and the cat would sit in the back seat of the car, and so yes, so desperate times called for desperate measures. But now I've been writing away. I've been doing the second book, and I'm not sure when it's going to come out. I'm still editing it, but yeah, it's coming along.
So I want to talk to you about the structure. I want you to talk about the structure, because it's just brilliant. And the way, but the depth of it, I mean, it sounds like, oh, she's toasting this one character, but within each character, there's this amazing, there are just these amazing stories and recollections and people, and they kind of weave through each one. And I want to ask you about John Boyne. Now, you know him very well, I think.
I do.
And he structured a book with decades.
Oh yeah, which one was that?
It was The Heart's Invisible Furies.
Oh, of course.
And it was so great because the decade, you know, it was the structure.
Yes, it's brilliant.
Confined to the structure.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if there was any connection, but it doesn't sound like it.
No, there isn't. You know, and there's another, Donal Ryan, who wrote the Spinning Heart And he is just the most beautiful writer. He always puts a structure on his books like that. He could do something in 3 parts, or he can do something according to 21 different characters or something like that. It's just, for me as a debut author, it was an easy way. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but it was a way in which to hang a tale. It was a way in which, writing my first book, I was able to see it as perhaps 5 long short stories. So it was less scary to me as a debut author. But then, of course, the challenge was in doing that is, as you said, ensuring that there was a connection and a weaving, and a keeping of the story moving forward. So, I brought a draft of this book into University College Dublin when I was doing my master's, with the very purpose of ensuring that I was hitting it correctly. So the other students that were there, the tutors, were helping me ensure that the story kept moving forward through these stories, not getting bogged down in something, but I was shifting it on enough. So I just found it a really, really handy tool. And in fact, one of the debates in college was, after I'd finished the book, should I maybe somebody suggested, would I maybe get rid of the toasts now? And I'm like, oh, no. Because one thing we were taught was that when you're writing, very often you may put scaffolding or structures on your book that in fact you might pull away later on because it might need it anymore, because you've managed to tell the story, and you might need this method of telling it. But at the end of the day, I loved the structure of the 5 toasts. So no, it wasn't connected with John, although we have a long history, John and I, together. We're great friends, and we've known each other since our Waterstones days. In fact, I employed John Boyne in Waterstones. Oh, wow. Yeah, and to this day, I still remember the interview. He was the most impressive of interviewees. I don't know yourself, Sarah, when you interview people, I generally, at the time, never expected that people would actually dress up in he had a red blazer on. He was like 21 or 22, so young. Red blazer, he had a briefcase. Nobody had ever come to an interview in Waterstones with me with a briefcase. So this guy was getting the job before he even opened his mouth. But he's been a wonderful support, and it was in the time in Waterstones that he actually got his first writing contract. So, I've been there from the very beginning with him and watched his journey and celebrated it with him and been in awe of him and in awe of his commitment to the craft, how much he helps debut authors, and his diligence, his work ethic is just, he works so hard. So he's been a great support to me, a great guide for me. In fact, it was John who back in 2013 suggested that I write. I'd hit a crossroads in my career, and he said to me, why don't you write? You've been reading great novelists all your life, well, since our Waterstones days. So go write, even if it's just a hobby. But almost as soon as I started, I knew, no, I really, really like this. This is actually something I'm very comfortable with.
Did you get awards before you went into your writing program? I mean, were you submitting, or were people asking you to, or how did that work?
Now, you very kindly gave me the Hennessy New Irish Writing Award. I didn't actually win it. I was shortlisted, but I'm going to take it. I think from here on in, I'm just going to say I won that. No, I think I was like everybody else who, sometimes you get shortlisted for things, or you might win something, and other times you get nowhere, because writing is so subjective. So each time you enter a competition, you've got a different reader, somebody who may not particularly like the kind of stuff you write. So my first short story that I ever wrote got shortlisted for the Hennessy New Irish Writer Award. So I naturally thought I was a genius. You know, I thought, right, everything I'm going to write is obviously going to get picked up somewhere. And, you know, but that isn't the case. That isn't how it works. So no, at that time, you know, I was just trying like everybody else to get my short stories into journals. And getting a lot of rejections like everybody does. I mean, it was the same thing when I came out with the draft of the novel ready to send out to the world. I got rejection after rejection after rejection on this book. And it took me 9 months to find an agent, and a lot of emails with the words "no thank you" written in them, but a lot of really good emails as well. Like I got 1 or 2 near misses where people said, really like this is really good, but we're not going to take it. And those emails really helped me to keep going. Right. So yeah, I mean, it took a while to get an agent, and then, but actually after I got the agent, the deals came in pretty quickly. Straight after, it was like within a month, it had been picked up in the UK. It went to auction in the UK, it went to auction in Germany, and then a month or 2 after that, it got picked up by Macmillan, by Thomas Dunn Books, an imprint, a hardback imprint of Macmillan bought it, and there is the hardback, and it was wonderful. And wonderful working with the American team. Can I just say, I have to thank the American team, because it was them who came up with the title, When All Is Said.
Right. Now, how did that happen?
Well, I had a title, can I remember, or do I need to read it? No, I had a title that was taken from the end of the first chapter, in which Morris says something like, I'm here to remember all that I have been and all that I will never be again. So I had chosen All That I Have Been.
Oh, uh-huh.
Right. But my UK publisher said it's very wordy. You know, people don't seem to be able to remember that over here. They keep saying, you know, what's that Irish novel that you're publishing? You know, they couldn't remember the actual words. So, so the US and the UK publisher, everybody put their thinking hats on, and I was sent off to think about a title, and I came up with about 10, none of which were working for me, until one day Stephen from Thomas Dunn Books emailed and said, we've just had a meeting and we quite like the idea of When All Is Said. What do you think? And it was immediate. I was like, I love it. I absolutely love it. And the UK signed off on it immediately as well. So it is thanks to the wonderful Thomas Dunn team in New York for having given me this great title.
It's worked really well. Title.
Yeah, isn't it?
So many meanings to it.
Yes.
And it fits so well with what.
Yes, the spirit of the book. And yeah.
How did you, was there one character or toast was more difficult, or that solidified everything, or that you went, aha, this is it? This is, yeah. Okay. How were they, how did they come?
Well, I always knew there was going to be, I always knew there was going to be Sadie, and I knew Sadie would come at the end. I always knew there was going to be Kevin, the son. I knew Tony was there from very early on. Mm-hmm. Noreen came a little bit later, and Molly came last. Mm-hmm.
And Molly is the daughter.
The daughter who's stillborn, yeah. She came last, but she was a very significant toast, because she is the connection. She is the way that Morris somehow makes peace with the Dollard family, who they were the neighbors, and the very rich neighbors for whom Morris worked when he was younger, and didn't have a particularly positive experience there. Right. And she made the link, she made the connection for me to be able to allow Morris find his peace. And really, she kind of, she because she came later, I suppose I really enjoyed writing her because I knew I had such a specific purpose for her.
Okay.
So I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed writing Noreen as well, who's the kind of the sister-in-law who has lived in an institution all of her life, really. And she was a very quirky character. And I enjoyed writing her uniqueness and her funny ways and the way that she really just clung to Mara. There was something about Mara she just loved. Whereas the rest of the world were kind of always like, no, you're a cranky guy. Nobody really fell in love with Morris, really, other than Sadie. But Noreen did. Noreen had this attraction to him immediately, and she just like clung to him and loved being around him. And he got a kick out of that. And I liked seeing Morris kind of proud, that she took to him so well. So yeah, I enjoyed writing each of the characters, I have to say, but they came at different stages, you know.
I mean, I'm just so in awe of everything you accomplished with this novel. So how did you decide on the stout and then the stout, and then final being a whiskey? I mean, tell me about that.
So very early on, obviously, I knew I wanted this structure of 5 toasts, and I had to think, well, what am I going to choose for Morris to drink? And there are so many men who will sit to a bar in Ireland, and it would be easy to give them a pint of Guinness. But I realized that this was an older man. He's going to do what they used to do, which was drink a bottle of stout, and not from the fridge. It couldn't be cold. It had to be a warm bottle of stout. So this was a very specific thing to an older gentleman. So there had to be stout because, that gives you the ballast. That starts you off for the evening. And then he would move to the hard stuff. What I didn't want, and this was kind of difficult, I didn't want him to be very drunk. Right. I didn't want it to go into this stereotypical Irish Irishman sitting at bar. I didn't want that. So hence just the 5 drinks. And even though he is obviously affected by it by the end, it's not that kind of drunk Irishman thing. Right. I wanted to stay well away from that, because we're not all drunks. we're able to pace ourselves. Right. What Morris is very typically Irish about is his inability to tell somebody like his son that he loves him very much. Right. And all of that, and the regrets he has around that kind of father-son relationship. That's very typically Irish, and I wanted that to be there. Right. Because I think that is very, very us. Although I think it's quite international as well. I've been really surprised by the emails I've gotten from people all over the world who aren't necessarily of Irish origin, who said, I get that so much. I get that difficulty between father and son, and everything we hold back, and all of those things we never say, and all of the regrets that we're left with. Right. So it's quite an international thing, actually. It would seem.
It's also interesting because it never seems to evolve, that difficult relationship between a father and a son. I mean, it's something that is just, it's so interesting, but your exploration of it is so beautifully done. I mean, and you feel for both of them so much. So,
somebody asked me, would I do a Kevin novel, like a follow-up, a Kevin, so it's one of those things that's in the back of my head. You never know. One of these days, in about 10 years' time.
So can I ask what you're working on now?
So I don't talk about it too much, because I'm one of these writers who just thinks that's going to jinx it if I talk about it too much. But it's a female voice this time. She is Irish, and she comes from the Midlands of Ireland, which is where I'm living at the minute. And she's a younger voice. She's in her 30s. So that's been interesting for me to kind of switch over. So I've been writing it now for about 2 or 3 years. I was writing it through the wonderful busyness of last year when all is said came out. So it was a bit like, as somebody said it must feel like having an affair, because I'd be, you know, half the time all about Morris, and then the other half I'm like, oh, I have to give Jeannie some time. And so it was like this fight between my two characters. But she's coming. She's
Right.
more alive for me now. There's been more time to especially during Corona, to get to know her really well. So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I was just saying. So I don't know when it will come out. It could be 2021, but then dates are shifting with everything that's going on, and I'm not sure. But perhaps 2021, there might be.
Are you drawing on your 30-year-old self there, or do you have a mom like you did your father? I mean,
I think in every novel.
My daughter's 30, and I'm just trying to imagine what goes on in her head, and I don't know. All I can think of is, I want you to be content and you know.
Yes.
I'm just
But
I think I could draw on my 30-year. I don't know. It's we're not so far apart in age, so I think it would be. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I am. I think with any novel you do draw on your own experiences anyway. But yeah, I suppose I am looking back to what was happening for me then, or at different points in my life. I think, you know, I'm just drawing on different things and just hoping it works, and hoping it, you know, people get her and her story makes sense. And, you know, she's a person who is trying to get to that contented place in her life. You know, you were saying that wish for your daughter. She wishes this for herself so much, but she has got a lot of things that have been put in her path that she's finding it hard. And I have drawn on my own experiences a little bit, but she's as unique as Morris was to me, really, as well. So it's been nice getting to know her.
Right. We have some questions I want to get to. However, I do want to ask you who have you read lately that you've loved? What novel or what what do we need to read?
Well, you know, whenever I talk about this, I'm always going on about Richard Russo. So, I mean, but he needs no selling over there, does he? You know, I mean, everybody loves Richard Russo over there. Pulitzer Prize. Oh, love him to death. So I read Chances Are, that came out the end of last year, wasn't it, over here? So wonderful, brilliant, and then Everybody's Fool that came out a couple of years ago with the follow-up to Nobody's Fool. I just love him. Who have I been reading lately that is just, I have gone back to, actually, David Mitchell is a wonderful writer. He wrote Cloud Atlas. He's his new one, Utopia Avenue, coming out.
Yeah.
I have it on computer. So I have started it, but it's on the computer, and I'm not good at reading on the computer. So I'm waiting for the book. I'm waiting for the book to arrive. So I'm very excited about that. That's.
I'm about, I don't know, 100 pages in. It reads so fast.
Does it?
Yes, I think faster than some of his others, because it just moves right along with these characters and this band. And
it's quite I love the idea that it's kind of going back, and I could be wrong here completely, but I loved Black Swan Green, which was a lot about, I suppose, well, not loosely, I don't know. It was about his childhood, really. It was, you know, he was drawing on his own experiences of growing up in the UK. And I love that so much. And I love the fact that this book is about, you know, somebody in the UK, and it's the 60s, isn't it? And this band, it kind of just, it feels like there's echoes of Black Swan Green. So I'm really excited about it. But so 100 pages in, it's reading well. Oh, I'm delighted.
I love it. And you know, the hard thing is that right now it's really, it's kind of hard to concentrate reading.
Okay.
And I was reading this article that was talking about that, but it was so long.
Brilliant. I love that. That's so good.
Anyway, you know, so thrillers are working for me really well.
Right. Yes. Okay.
I just want to
Yeah.
have the time to just really get into it. But anyway,
Yeah.
we have a lot of questions, and so
Okay.
I'm hoping Lauren will step in and ask some of these questions.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
All right. So our first question is, we have a reader who just loved the way that you created your setting in Ireland. And their question is, how does a writer create such a realistic atmosphere without bogging readers down with too many details?
So one of the things is that you've got to trust your reader's imagination. You don't want to do all the work. I mean, most of it, when you're reading a book, you're imagining this stuff yourself. And we each will have a different image of one passage. If I was to compare, a passage I read of one book, of a particular book, and ask my friend, what did she think that character looked like? She's going to think somebody completely different than I have. So really, you want to give a reader the chance to just think it up themselves, to imagine it themselves. And so you just give, you give a lovely few brush strokes and allow the reader enter that lovely world of the imagination, because that is what reading is all about. It's wonderful where you go to in your own head. So I think a couple of nice hints and suggestions and references, and then the reader just does all the work.
That was a beautiful answer.
Oh,
Judy, who is joining us from Oklahoma today, is asking, she says, why didn't Sadie speak to Morris to help him see near the end that he had so much to look forward to with his grandchildren and that he could work himself out of his depression?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I did think about that, and I certainly, I could have done that, but I thought there was something, I thought that might be too easy. I just didn't, it didn't feel right for me to do that. And I thought there was something quite significant about, I think Mara says at some stage, she doesn't talk to me. I want her to talk to me. And she doesn't. I don't know. I suppose as a writer, I was giving him the struggle. I was letting him work this out for himself. And yeah, I think it's really nice that you, as you're doing these things, people say, why didn't you? And you're kind of going, yeah, why didn't I? but actually, that question did come up for me, and I specifically chose, no, this is about Morris's story, and I wasn't convinced that Morris would be able to rise to it either. That he'd be able to latch on to Sadie's words and say, do you know what, you're right. I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to be okay with it, because he was so sad and so heartbroken by her loss. I hope that answers it, but a great question.
That is a good question. Is there, have you experienced that kind of deep loss and felt like you missed something?
I have to say I'm very lucky in that I haven't felt a very close loss in a family member or spouse. I'm very lucky. Both of my parents are still alive and kicking. My dad is 90, going to be 90 very soon, and my mum is 85 this year. I have felt loss in other ways, like everyone has, in relationships, and and in utter devastation, and loneliness. So I think we all through life experience loss, but I'm very aware that I haven't experienced loss through death, and not that I'm wishing it or willing it, but I have a lot of respect for people who have lived through grief, and I see my own mother and father have lived through a lot of grief, in their life and a lot of loss. And it is something that I know is coming to me at some stage, and I kind of see it as you know, I know it will come, and I don't want it to come. But I suppose as my mum and dad get older, and thank God they don't hear me talk about this, because I'd hate them to think that I was talking about, you know, that the idea that losing them is coming down the line.
Right.
But it sits there as a worry in me.
Yeah. And you don't always know what conversation you didn't have until you haven't had it,
Brilliant.
So
Exactly.
another thing that's kind of difficult to maybe prescribe to your characters.
Yeah.
So the coin, talk about the coin.
Oh yeah, I love doing the coin. The coin was great fun. Again, this was a connection that I wanted to make between Morris and the Dollard family. I wanted to keep this kind of connection, this draw, and sense of guilt for Morris, or and I thought, well, do you know what I'll do? I'm going to make him steal something or take something as like an act of revenge. And I knew it had to be something that would be small enough to fit in his pocket. And so I thought, well, a coin, excellent. And off I went to start to research coins and expensive coins. And this coin that features throughout the novel does exist. And it is it was from King Edward VIII's his abdication. Well, before he abdicated, when he became king, they had minted these coins, and in the newspapers they were called the coinage that never was, because on his abdication all the coinage was withdrawn. Okay. And so, but what I did was I said in the book that there was only 6 sovereigns, these particular gold sovereigns, minted. In fact, I don't know how many were minted, but I know they're very rare, and they actually do reach a huge amount of money at auction. And I created this 7th one, and it is this 7th one that Morris gets his hands on through an interesting backstory. And this 7th one was supposedly the one that Edward VIII wanted to be minted to give to Wallis Simpson as a present. And so I love the fact that this story that grips the world, and particularly with the crown, and Edward and Mrs. Simpson continues to be a story that we're captivated by. So I loved the idea of bringing this story onto a farm in County Meath in Ireland. So it was great fun. I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed weaving it throughout the book and bringing it back in every now and again, and so the reader's going, oh yeah, the coin, yeah, what is the story with the coin? And so you keep going until the end, when you're going, oh right. So I had a lot of fun with that. A lot of fun.
So yeah, and it becomes a kind of it's a thread, but it also is this reference that is so, like you said, you said it brilliantly, as you would. Well, so what else? Is there anything else you want to tell us about this book, or what has there been anything unusual that's happened? I mean, and did you expect this kind of reception?
No. Like every author out there, you just want your book to be published and see it in a bookshop. Although I have to, you'll understand this now as a bookseller, okay? So I thought, this is what I want. I just want to see my book on a shelf. It'll be so amazing. It'll be great. Except for the very first day that I passed a bookshelf where I saw, or a bookshop where I saw my book in there. It was in there in piles, and I couldn't go in because I was so frightened. Because all I could think of as I walked by was, oh my God, they're going to have so many returns. They're going to have to send all of them back. Every time my editor in the UK would say, we're going for a new print run, I was like, really? Are you sure? Because they may come back to the warehouse,
They so she still. Well, it shows you. I mean, the word of mouth. And I really think that, you know, the book business is so interesting. And so it's changed so much since, well, and it's hard, but it's wonderful. And, you know, when you mention returns, because we buy these books and we bring them into the store because we want to sell them.
Exactly.
And so every time you have to return a book, it's like this little failure. This little just shot in our heart. And yet we have to do it or the cash is too hard. So it's so funny that was the first. I thought you were going to say that they wouldn't, that they would recognize you or something and they'd want to talk about. I didn't expect you to say, and they want returned.
I know, but I was like, I was back to working in Waterstones and we used to have piles of returns of things and nobody wanted to do the returns. Oh, and this is one of John Boyne's favorite stories, that he was late one day in the whole time that he was there. He was late one day. And he says, because of that, I made him work in returns for months and months and months, because it was a huge shop. So we were doing returns and nobody wanted to do returns. So he says, I did that to him just because he was late one day, but it's not true.
Well, you know, some people hold you know, hold their memories dear. That's so
They do. Yeah.
Was he a good bookseller?
He was fantastic.
Good. Oh my gosh.
He's Mr. Efficient. He was the best person to ask for recommendations. He was great fun. He's very, very funny, very sharp-witted, and we would just laugh. One of our favorite things to do, and we'd phone each other up, would be when we realized that the Ingram's order had come in from the States. So we had a section which was American imports. So it was where books weren't available through the UK, but we could get them through Ingram's. So we'd ring each other up and say, it's just arrived. The box from Ingram's has just arrived and goods in. And we'd run down and we would literally take out these books like they were precious jewels. And we would just touch them and we would look at, what is the binding? What is this? I forget the name in America.
I don't know.
Yeah, there is a word for it. And a lot of the American imports that came in had that beautiful jagged edge to it. Yes. So we would literally be flicking through these books, obviously making sure we didn't break the spines. But we just had they were just great memories. They were just wonderful.
Tacit thing, you know.
Yeah, I know, to touch it.
Looking in.
Yeah.
And that's never changed. I mean, it's the book did not die. The physical book
know.
Died.
Even though
we were so scared. And it, you know, first it was audio, then it was the ebook and electronics in the book. I mean, it's kind of a perfect thing. So
it's wonderful. Yeah. No, it's just great. I love it. I still love the physical form. As I say, you know, I have books. I get sent books online a lot, and you know, I'm like, you know, could you just send me the book? I'd really just rather the book. I want to just hold the book and carry it around me.
Yeah, and it's tough now for the marketing departments and the publishers because they want to get books in booksellers' hands, but they can't. They just can't. So
I know it's very, very hard.
And I just I have very much trouble with that.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Oh, Sarah, it's been great fun. I've loved it. And thank you so much for inviting me. You're so good.
Well, I hope to welcome you here for the next book and read about this young 30-year-old protagonist, female. And I look forward to selling your book for a long, long time.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah.
So thank you very much. Virtual clap.
Oh, and to you, thank you so much. Really, I appreciate it so much. All that you do. Cheers to everyone out there.